Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Squall Growth Podcast. So great to have you here. I have a fantastic guest. Welcome, Itamar Novick from Recursive Ventures. Itamar, good to see you.
Chris, it's great to see you. It's been a while. We've been, friends for maybe a decade, close to a decade?
Like a decade, about a decade.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. And I can't wait to talk about building companies and investing in them. This is exciting.
I know. Well, it's so great to have you on because I love your background. You've done so many interesting things. And so, it's definitely, I know you as the entrepreneur, right? And so would love to have you introduce yourself as the entrepreneur and hear your background, right? And then we can maybe dive into a little bit of some of the early days of some of your companies.
That'd be amazing. And thanks again for having me. So yeah, just like really briefly about myself. Name is Itamar Novick. And I've had my entire professional career, which is getting closer to 25 years now, has been in startups. That's always been my passion. And, I've been on all sides of the table. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I took my last company public first in the ASX, last week in the NASDAQ. So super excited about that. Yes, thank you. Um, I've done almost every possible role in a startup. I started off as an engineer, and then I've done product management extensively, move over to the business side. There's actually a CFO for an IPO, corp dev, biz dev, lots of different roles, kind of a jack of all trade, master of none. So I'm good for up to 100 or 200 employees. And then there's way better people than me. I've also spent the last 15 years as an angel, as an advisor, supporting many, many companies. I've been investing out of Recursive Ventures, which is my venture fund, for that long. Probably supported over 150 founders in their journey from, just get going all the way to early stages of scaling the company. Been very fortunate to have backed a bunch of amazing unicorns early on. I'm an investor in Deal and Placer and Honeybook and a bunch of other companies that have been that have grown a lot. And super passionate about startups. Been on all different sides of the table, and just love supporting founders who are building their next company. That's me.
And so I think something interesting, I was just talking with another founder about, building that core team, right? And I really thought I thought about your journey of how you got involved with Life 360, which just went public.
Right. Yeah, that's a really cool story. It's actually a story about courage and perseverance. So I was a VC when I first met Life 360. I was a senior associate on Sand Hill Road at a firm called Morgan Ventures, like this storied Series A firm. And one of my bosses brought in Life 360. He was an angel investor. I was like, take a look at this. This is really interesting. Now we're talking 2011. So, a bunch of water passed under the bridge since. And I did all the diligence work. And I was like, wow, there's something here. Like consumers want this. Mm-hmm. And then all my buddies on Sand Hill basically passed on the deal. They're like, we don't get it. Kids are never going to have smartphones. I'm serious. That was the number one reason people passed on Life 360 in 2011. Life 360, now the public company, with 66 million monthly active users. VCs in 2011 were like, yeah, this is never going to work. Kids are not going to have smartphones. Real story.
Fascinating.
So I did all the diligence. And I was like, wow, there's something there. I don't care about what all my VC colleagues are saying. Like consumers want this. So I ended up leaving the world of venture capital and joining the company full time. There was another co-founder in the company, early co-founder, that wanted to leave. And I was like, look, if I'm doing this, I'm going all in. And that's what I did. I took every last cent that I had and used it to buy that founder that wanted to leave, joined the company essentially as a late founder, and then spent 12 years taking it from seed all the way to IPO and beyond.
That's so interesting though. So the early, I didn't really fully understand that was the early founder who wanted to sell their shares and get out of the company.
Yeah. His wife, she's a dentist, and she wanted to open her own practice. And she went to this guy and basically told him, look, what's all this crap, like startups? It's never going to work. This is like some pipe dream. And I was like, okay, I'm selling it all. I'm just getting out of this thing. They're like,
Sold
okay,
it all.
I'll buy
Didn't
it.
keep. Did he keep a little bit, or did
Nope.
he's fully out?
He sold 100% of his holdings in the company. And
2011.
yeah, and I don't want to throw numbers out there, but it was cheap.
Yeah. Well, I think this is something, interesting though, is like this is basically a secondary sale, and usually it's at a discount to what would be the preferred stock because it's common as well, right?
Right. That is true. Well, founder shares are common. Exactly.
Yeah. Founder shares are commons, and then it's a private sale, non-competitive market. So it's very interesting. This is one of the things with getting out early, right? You take a big discount on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so you saw this, you're like, okay, you realize kids are going to have smartphones, and then parents are going to have a need here, a massive need. And so you got involved, and so then how did you do that? How did you talk to Chris Halls, the CEO, and actually like convince him to want you involved in the first place? What was that process like? What was that
Oh,
dating process?
so I already had that's kind of I was kind of the adult supervision early on because Chris, like, he started the company in college.
Yeah.
Never had. I mean, he interned at Goldman Sachs, like did some investment banking over the summer once, but this was his first job. And Alex, the other co-founder, same. He dropped out of school to build Life 360. And when I came into Life 360, I was already a very senior product guy and had experience building startups from the grounds up. I was at a company called Gigia before. I was employee number 3 that we ended up selling to SAP for $350 million. So I already had a successful track record as a startup operator, right? And before I joined the company, I was actually like helping them out and just like spending time on product and brainstorming stuff, and really like that's actually probably my superpower, is spending time with founders and helping them figure stuff out, right?
Mhm.
So they really liked it, and they're like, okay, we need to hire somebody who can take this product to the next level. It was early, very early. It was
Yeah.
pre-seed, seed, like super early, and they only had a handful of users. I was like, yeah, I'd love to do it, even though I've never done a consumer company before. I was always a B2B guy. I just saw something in the product, and I was like, yeah, I want to take this to the next level, and that's what I did. I joined the company as VP of product and build the early product and growth and analytics and quality of all things, because that's what product cared about. It's like, we got to deliver quality, and spend a couple of years doing that, taking the company from a few single hundred thousands of users to over 10 million users.
Wow. And so there's always something though with like growing the user base. And so what were the early like ways that you were able to kind of activate that growth channels, and obviously a lot of product led growth as well, and this is a buzzword today, product led growth. Right?
Yeah, Life 360 even today has 66 monthly active users, right? And spend almost nothing on customer acquisition. It's all organic. The company gets millions of downloads a month through the app stores. And my team architected all that. And that engine still powers Life 360 today. So really what we figured out is, oh man, we had to think outside of the box, like big time. So we were too early to market with our core value proposition. It's like coordinating family, safety, and peace of mind. Like, people didn't really understand what that is. So we ended up doing, and this is one of the dirty known secrets actually at this point of Life 360 early on, is that instead of trying to educate our users about what we are and why they need this, we did it the other way around. We actually started figuring out what users want today and kind of latch to it and then take it from there. So the first step, sort of significant step function for the company, was when we figured out that parents that care about family safety, they're actually very concerned about sex offenders in their neighborhood, registered sex offenders. So we looked at like the traffic volumes, search volumes of keywords that were related to Life 360. It's like find your family, track your family, see where everybody's on the map, those kind of keywords. And they had a certain amount of volume. And then we look at keywords related to sex offender search, and that had 40x more volume. Not 4x, 40x, like complete different like order of magnitude. So we got creative. And because Life360 is a map product, we started putting the sex offender database on the map and adding keywords around sex offender search because, well, we followed our audience. That's what our audience wants.
Yep.
And then, overnight, we went from, a couple of thousands of downloads a month to tens and hundreds of thousands of downloads a month. It's magic. And that was the first sort of big stepstone in our growth journey.
And so like broadening that out, right? It sounds to I hear that story and it sounds like you did what I see 99.9% people not do is you talked to the market and understood what they wanted. um and listened intently with that. And then how did you think about that initial validation, setting up that test? Because that's always something that, I think people can get stuck on here once they get an insight. Is actually how'd you prove that out? How'd you get that through to seeing
Yeah,
it?
I mean, look, it doesn't matter if you're building a consumer company or an enterprise company. If you're not innovating, if you're not thinking about new things, and if you're not doing experimentation, eventually you'll be toast. So, and you always have to push yourself, and you always have to push the team. It's like, how do we nail this? What's next? Is there another lens on this thing? And you also I think as a founder, you should be driven by your vision, but you should be pragmatic in the sense of trying things that are outside the box. Maybe they're not maybe they're not 100% on brand, but you're really trying to connect to users and, deliver something that they want. This is not about you, the founder. This is about the customer, right? The customers, what do they want, right? And rapid experimentation in order to figure out what sticks and what doesn't is key. So in a way, the way I think about starting companies, it's more like a journey in the founders' heads between where they are today and all the things they need to understand to win. So, and that's all the things that we think about. It's like, how do I position this? How do we communicate? Who are the partners? Who are the stakeholders? How much are they going to pay? Like all those things you have to figure out. And if you could do that journey like that, just in a day, you'd have a very successful company very quickly, but obviously it takes time. So how do you win? You accelerate the journey by collecting as much information, doing as much experimentation, and honestly being open-minded and intellectually curious and thinking of first principles versus getting stuck in a corner saying, this is who we are and this is what we do. It's like, what if your users don't care?
I love that and especially that drive for curiosity, right? And that is, I think, a key element to success is just knowing, hey, I'm wrong. I think about I often talk to founders about the Einstein-Bohr debates, how Einstein was actually wrong about the laws of physics. And if he's wrong about physics, what's the chance that I'm wrong too, but I love that experimentation and how you drove it, but then and taking that user growth, but then you had all these users and then you had, okay, time to make money. How did you think about that?
Yeah, that's hard, especially when you're running a freemium product like
Yeah.
Life360 does, because it's always hard to figure out where do you draw the line between free and paid, that infamous paywall, right? I think at the end of the day, you got to strike the right balance between the business and the users, right? And obviously you want those two interests to be aligned as much as you can, but at the end of the day, users want to get everything for free. And you need to build a business, right? So what we did at Life360 was actually on the paid product was, we took a hard hit. We took one area, which specifically for us at Life360 early on was place alerts. Those are geolocation alerts when you arrive or leave a certain spot, let's say home or school, so you can see, oh, my kid left school, they're now headed back home, ETA, they'll be back in 15 days, right? And so I put a payroll around, you can have some free usage of it called 1 or 2 places, but if you want alerts from more places, you got to pay. And this was one of the top features of Life 360, if not like the number one feature. Like we knew this is like driving engagement, and we had to take some hit on the engagement side to produce a paywall to build a business. And I think doing that well, it doesn't happen overnight. It goes back having a very robust experimentation mindset and platform, and being very open-minded about what works. And actually, when you build a business like that, like Life 360, I mean, today Life 360 has millions of subscribers. It never stops. Like you have to constantly think about, how do we position this? How do we experiment? How do we try different things in order to make sure this is a better fit for our customers? So yeah, I launched the first paid product as head of product at Life 360, and I'd say it took us a year of brutal mistakes, pivots, repositioning, blah, blah, until we got to a point that we felt we were comfortable with. But once you plant that anchor, that pole in the ground, it just goes. It just like proliferates through the user base, and it works. It keeps growing. So it's one of those like measure twice, cut once kind of things that you have to do well.
Yeah. But there's also, to get to that point, you already had implemented that initial culture, right, of curiosity to get to there within that team. And this is where it's so interesting, is how do you think about this early stage now, advising multiple companies, and is like culture in the early days? How do you tell founders about this when you've seen it now at impact, right, at scale?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, I know that a lot of people talk about culture with early stage startups, but they often don't actually get down to dealing with culture until they're much later stage. And some HR person comes in and says, "Oh, we got to catch up on culture. We got to catch up on values," like all those conversations. And I get it. But on the flip side, as a person who's had the opportunity to work with so many early stage companies that actually scaled to very significant businesses that have been part of several IPOs and so on and so forth, I'd say the great founders, they find the time, they find the bandwidth to proactively think about culture as early as inception. So like, and I can give you examples. Let's just throw one random example on the table. Deal, DWEL, probably one of my biggest winners. Company's worth $12.5 billion now. The founders there, Alex and Shu, from day one, they're like, we are going to eat our dog food all the way through. So this is a company that, helps with remote hires and payroll and paying contractors offshore, all that stuff, right? So they said day one, all our employees are going to be contractors, not employees, because this is what we deliver for our customers. So we might as well, exhibit that, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to pay all our employees using our system, because we got to eat our own dog food, and we cater to remote companies. So we're going to be remote forever, right? And we're going to embody that as founders, and the buck stops with us when it comes to culture, right? So founders who do that early and like really have a very good grasp and are great at communicating to all the stakeholders around the table is that this is what we stand for as a company, right? This is right, and we're exhibiting this ourselves, and like these companies tend to do better.
It really is, and I think this is something that, like, that's what you illustrated two things. It's like illustrated like a real culture, that there was clear function behind that culture, and then there's the say do, right? And this is the thing that I think is the most dangerous thing, when as a CEO and early stage founders, you can say platitudes about your culture, you can say nice things, right, what HR wants you to say, but then you have to do that 100% of the time, right?
Yeah. And I think, by the way, this culture is an ongoing exercise. I'm not contemplating that you should spend 3 weeks when you're just starting a company to build all those things that you'd find at a later stage company where there's HR and they do culture and they put their values in every meeting room and all that stuff that we know happens later on. But like, I do ask founders early on, like, can you spend an hour just to double click on the 5 things that really matter to you in this company, right? That you stand for. It's just 5 bullet points, dude. Like, get it going, and it has a real impact over time as it unfolds. And if you are doing a good job as a founder, then your first hires are also like, they relate to that, right? And then the next hires, and then customers understand it, and it just grows over time with your company. So I'm a big advocate of just like, touching culture early on, setting the right footing, and then taking it from there.
Absolutely. I think that's extremely valuable in keeping it simple, right? So Itamar, we're about at the end of our time. What advice do you have for early stage founders?
Yeah.
What's the number
Just a
one
couple
thing?
of things. Being more like today, here and now, I think this is probably one of the best times in history to start a company. I'm not kidding. Like, this AI stuff is as big as the invention of the personal computer. It's massive. And what really drives value creation in tech is those mega cycles. And we're at the first inning of one. So if you've ever wanted to start a company, if you think you're going to be a great entrepreneur, if you want to build it for the long term, I don't think recent times have offered a better opportunity than what's happening now. It's the perfect storm. So go get them. That's number one. Number two is I think you got to be intellectually honest with, like, because it's very easy as a founder to just get like dragged into this, and it's like, before you start convincing customers, before you start raising money, before you start convincing all those investors they should put dollars into your business, make sure you're bought in first, like fully. Like, I was with a friend yesterday, and he was like, oh, I'm thinking about starting a company. I talked to 2 customers and it's great. And he just starts telling me on how this amazing idea is. It's like, you talk to 20 customers or did you talk to 2? You should find a way to get validation for you first and foremost, because you're the one that's going to spend the next 10, 15, 20 years building this. I just came off 12 years in Life 360. That's a lifetime, right? Is that really the mission that you believe in? Is that going to make the impact that you want to make? Do you want to spend the next 10, 15, 20 years doing that? And if the answer to that question is yes, and the answer to the previous question is yes, go get them.
I think that's an amazing piece of advice for founders, right? And really appreciate it. Itamar, always good to talk with you.
Same here, Chris. It's been a pleasure as always, and I can't wait for the next one. Thanks again for having me.
Awesome.